Hello, Com 1700 students. Here are your instructions for the Chapter 11 worksheet. As always, listen to the video in its entirety and take good notes so that you meet all the requirements of the assignment. This chapter is about interpersonal conflict, and as you can see from the list at the beginning of the chapter, we have a lot of different ways of thinking of and defining conflict. So in this context, when we're thinking about interpersonal conflict, the way communication scholars study it, there are 5 specific components to the definition of interpersonal conflict. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to examine those 5 components of conflict and identify them in a specific conflict. Secondly, I'm going to ask you to look at the part of the chapter on the disinhibition effect. This is something that we all experience every day as we use technology, and I'd like you to reflect on a time when either you experienced the disinhibition effect yourself or someone you were communicating with was experiencing it. Let's look at each of these in detail. I'd like you to start by taking a deep dive into our definition of interpersonal conflict and the 5 components that make up that definition, or the 5 conditions that have to be present in order for something to be an interpersonal conflict. So things like the expressed struggle and the perception of scarce resources and the other components that are listed there. Think about those and then try to identify them in a specific conflict that either you have been a part of or it can be somebody else's conflict. But briefly explain the conflict and then identify each of those 5 components in that conflict. And then for the second part of the exercise, I'd like you to study the part of the chapter on the disinhibition effect and identify a time when you were under the grip of the disinhibition effect or when someone else who was communicating with you seemed to be experiencing it. And explain that experience and what was the result of the disinhibition effect being prevalent in that communication exchange. How did that affect the communication between you and this other person? So here's a summary of this assignment. There are 2 parts. The first is to review the definition of interpersonal conflict and talk about a conflict in which each of those 5 components were present. List them and explain them. This could be your own conflict or somebody else's. Secondly, review the disinhibition effect and describe an incident where you were under the effect of that or somebody else was when they were communicating with you. And what was the effect of that disinhibition on the communication exchange? How did it make it either better or worse for you? To complete this assignment, write up your answers in a Word document, save that to your computer, and then upload it to the proper Dropbox on eLearning. Please do not send these to me as email attachments, but do email me if you have questions about the assignments. And I'll see you again next week. Bye.